Hello there. You're listening to Barely Qualified with me, Morgan. Alongside me, as always, is Ryan. We are barely qualified to talk about Formula One, but we're going to talk about it nonetheless. Ryan, you and I are experts in speaking double Dutch, confusing, incomprehensible conversations. What's on the pod this week?
The intros just get worse. No, what is on the pod? Right, notes. In no particular, just random, as you say, Google Dutch, Google Dutch, Dutch, whatever. Sprint race, snooze, emojis.
Very much
Max,
so.
another mistake. Oscar, well, did we have a summer break? The mid the mid pack. Why is that not happening up top? Mercedes, what the fuck? Team order, Russell, weak. Russell saved by the bell. Norris on the charge, baby. Hat. Max re-signing. Let's chat. Dude, grid rivals. I could have put quite a few more things in there, I think, but I didn't want to have a stupidly long list. So I thought they'd be mentioned anyway, as and when different topics come up. We obviously normally do a bit of a what we thought of the race each anyway, so I'm sure we'll bring bits and bobs up in that discussion as well. Hence, for instance, the Williams crash. I could have put that in there. Also, does it really matter? Probably not. So we're not going to spend much time on it. It doesn't affect anything really. It's just two teammates clashing, both just signed new deals. It's something to maybe chat about as we talk through the race or whatever. So um, again, with these long race weekends, which I absolutely hate when it comes to grid rivals, as we will discuss later. Um, Call me out again.
It's not like you
Uh,
didn't. It's not like you didn't have 4 weeks to
I
prepare.
don't, but just out of practice, aren't I? You know what I mean? Like the summer break, I'm chilling, man. I live at the beach. I'm down the beach most nights, and then just fucking thing just creeps up on you, doesn't it? And the next thing you know,
You just put a
lockdowns happened.
placeholder team in. Just put
I
a
know, and
placeholder
I
team
did
in.
this. I did this last time you told me, and I did that, and this time I didn't. So, God, I was pissed off with myself. And so starting with sprint quali, all that. Um, Now I don't know if this is just a me thing. I was actually nodding off. Bearing in mind, I think it's like only like 19 laps or whatever. I had to rewind the sprint race. I lost count how many times I'd fallen asleep and then gone.
Yeah, it was arguably the worst. I was struggling to think of a worse sprint race. Quali was
Yeah,
Quali was fine. Uh, it wasn't a particularly remarkable quali, but it was interesting, and it was great to see George back on top. So that was relatively interesting. But yeah, the race, I honestly I could not think of a more boring sprint race. We had two incidents to talk about, which bless them, the commentators really did have a good go at kind of hamming, beefing that up as much as possible. Like, look at this, we've had
yeah,
we've had a little bit of action. So much so they decided to talk about it all through Sunday's race as well. But yeah, there really wasn't a lot going on, and God, we were all just left robbed, right? If it rains on the final lap,
yeah.
then it could have been just, or maybe with a couple laps to go. Oh, it would have been absolutely fascinating. But as it was, George crosses the line just in time. It's all over, and then the rain comes down, which is. I felt like this whole weekend we were just teased with this idea of it's going to be wet and it could be interchangeable. Surprisingly, the race on Sunday was actually pretty good, particularly
I
after the
mean, yeah.
sprint
I
was
mean,
so
I
bad.
yeah, I was really worried about having to then sit through, a couple of hours of a race if it was going to be kind of like the sprint. I mean, it was zero overtakes, zero attempts, like zero. It was just so. And I was like, oh God, Christ, is this going to be like just qualify? whoever qualifies, it's just round and round and round and round. And I thought, oh, please don't be that. Which it wasn't. And we had a bit of rain prior, um, and whatnot. So yeah, quali was quali. It was quite, like I say, it was a little bit. There's a few in the mix, wasn't there? And again, I think the top four were was the difference was like literally like a tenth or whatever. So that was obviously quite entertaining. And then the race kicks off. I mean, I was just getting the sprint results up actually because
It was such a
as you
forget.
as
It
you
was
said
such
as
a
you said
forget.
Russell. I mean, we had obviously like the overtake from Charles, didn't we? That's what at the end there. Got past to get into second. Um, Again, nothing top sort of who crept. Well, it was top eight, isn't it? In the sprint, Gasly got into eighth. Yeah, nothing really to shout about there, was there? And then, as we say, we then got into the race. Um,
The
the
race
reason,
proper, you mean?
the proper race, yeah. I mean, the reason I've put in here, I've just bumped up the list because it kind of, you mentioned it yourself that obviously Russell winning the sprint. I've put here, did we have a summer break? Because when he won the sprint, I'm thinking, oh, okay, oh, interesting, interesting. Okay, yeah, the guy looks relaxed. Um, he's come out fresh, started again. Could be again similar to maybe like last year with the McLaren boys, where Norris starts hunting down that lead. It's like, okay, this is interesting. Antonelli also started a bit further down in that sprint, so it was like, this is good chunk of points that could be had here. And then we literally get to the race and bad start. Well, didn't qualify all that considering he won the sprint. You thought he would qualify better, Russell starts the race, bad start. Antonelli gains position, and we're just back to what we were before the summer break. So it was quite funny that I think as soon as it was like lights out and away we go, lights out and away we go. I'm thinking, yep, 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 and I was like, no, we're straight back to before the summer break. It just
It had a
didn't
bit
really
of
cause much.
inevitability about it. As soon as Kimmy got ahead into turn one, you just felt, oh right, yeah, here we go again. Kimmy's gonna romp away with this, or at least romp away from George Russell. I think I always fancied at that point. I always fancied Lando to win. He'd looked pretty good all weekend, and I know he faded in the sprint, but that the sprint kind of is just an extended practice, really, isn't it? With a few points up for grabs, so I felt confident they would sort out their setup, which obviously they did for Lando, and to a certain extent for Oscar, although obviously it didn't go quite as well for Oscar. But yeah, Kimmy getting past Russell, it was like, oh, I can't see Russell getting back past him. Kimmy's just too good, and yeah, well, obviously we'll get onto the team orders in a bit, but yeah, Kimmy once again. I mean, Kimmy did flawlessly in the race. Really, I don't think there's much more that he could have done. Um, he's romping away to this title, isn't he?
Yeah, and obviously when we had the restart, he obviously got right up the inside of Norris. Um, and then when that happened, I was just thinking, oh God, at that point, I was just like, it's just a Kimmy win again. Um, but, you know, Norris did not, did, well, there's quite a lot of it, wasn't it, really? A mixed reasons of how everyone finished because obviously there was a lot of strategy to play. Some people benefited, some people didn't, some people turned their tyres on different when I think McLaren's and Norris particularly was particularly good on the hards, wasn't he?
Yeah,
Um, so, I mean, we'll keep it at the beginning of the race then before we get into the teams too much. So then the reason we had a restart was obviously Max, his crash, which yeah, there's definitely no hiding there saying it was a wing, it was this, yeah, it was just a mistake, wasn't it? And we spoke in the last pod about, actually are some of these driver error and mistakes, and that's understandable. It's a new car, new setup. The great Max Verstappen, four-time world champion, can also look human. Um, we both obviously agree that he's arguably one of the greatest talents ever in the sport, and in particular car control, and in particular in the wet. So there's no hating from me or from you on this, but I was really surprised by it.
Really, really
Just was,
surprised. It's
especially in your home Grand Prix, the last one there, and you're not trying to keep the lead or trying to keep with sort of first because you're in second. Like, I mean, where even was he? He was like what, sixth?
yeah.
And it's like what? I
Well,
just thought it was really, really amateur.
what
Like,
was so interesting about it was they sort of alluded to this on Sky Sports with Karoon talking through it, that he was really careful on the penultimate corner, and he didn't run out wide at all because he was very cautious. Obviously, he didn't want to put his wheels on the paint or on the rumble strips as you would normally do coming out of that corner. So he was very cautious through there, and that's sort of standard 101 when it's wet, particularly when you're on slicks, you stay off the paint, right? Everybody knows that. But also, like, if you're on a bank curve like that, it seemed pretty obvious where the dry line was. He'd had the recce, behind the safety car, had a good look at the track. Maybe at that point he was too busy thinking about the start, didn't focus enough on the last corner. But like, it was pretty obvious that the dry or drier line, but the dry line was a little bit up. It wasn't the sort of tight line you would normally take. It just seemed like a really rookie mistake to put his car there. I mean, once he's put his car there, I don't, he's a passenger. You can be the greatest driver in the world. I don't think it matters. Once you've put but his decision to put his car on the inside like that was really confusing to me. And actually, I thought what was really interesting. So Gabby Bortoletto does pretty much the same thing, but he does his earlier. And I think because he's got less superior car control, he doesn't catch the slide. So he ends up doing a 360 uh, and somewhat luckily keeps it out of the barriers. I think Max was actually punished a little bit because he noticed the back end going. So then
trying to
he
correct
actually
it.
corrected into the slide, which Gabby didn't do. And so, yeah, he ends up getting unlucky because, it grips up and off he goes into the barrier. So I thought
It's a,
it was a
it's
very
a hard
rookie mistake.
crash as well,
It
wasn't
was
it?
a
It
hard
was a
crash.
hard
It
crash.
was a very rookie mistake from Max to put his car there in the first place. Um, yeah, I was surprised.
I think what we're seeing with Max this year, actually, I started to think about this, and I've got no experience. And I'm going to give you another analogy, and people who listen to go, oh, another one, and it'd be another sport probably. And it's like, well, we're not, unfortunately, we're not F1, drivers. Oh, well, actually, Joe, I could keep it to karting. You can keep it to karting, but we also haven't performed, at a higher level in karting. But when I used to play tennis and things, and I'd always find when I played a better player that I'd play better. I just would play beyond my ability, and I'd be like, and I may even lose that match. But I think, oh my God, like I matched that person, or I might beat them and be like, wow, my level's gone way up there. But yet, if you give me someone who is definitely a worse player than me, hits the ball a lot slower than me, and is just a more awkward player in the fact that they're not a polished player, like they're not hitting with topspin, or they're not, they're just slicing the ball and they're just getting the ball back. Your game just goes because you're like bringing down to that level, and you just can't find a flow. And obviously, these other drivers aren't bringing Max down to a level, but because he even mentioned this a little bit himself about how other drivers are finding it easier to get up to speed in these cars because they're just, in his own words, they're just easier to drive in the sense of like the car's doing so much. We've spoken about it with all the regulations and the rules, and the car having this AI system and maximizing certain laps when you get into a flow and all this da da da. So therefore, when those cars and you're going after laps, then why would his teammate be massively behind him like he has been in the past? Because the car is literally dictating where is the best to save the energy and use it, and etc. etc. So I can kind of understand what he was saying with that. And let's be honest, no one's ever been anywhere near him up to this point of this regulation. So that's would just be a fact, wouldn't it? Like I don't think that all of a sudden Hadjar is this amazing second driver at Red Bull. The fact that Lawson can come in and do the same thing when he was shocking last year away from Max in that Red Bull car. So there definitely is something in that. But are we finding that Max, because he's not chasing for a championship currently, and because he's not in one of the top two cars, that he's at his best when it's like hyper focus time, when it's like I am when the pressure's higher, Max is better. Some sportsmen are just like that, aren't they? Or sports stars. They're just when the pressure is at the highest, it's when they can then almost sort of tunnel vision, and these mistakes and things, they don't even exist because it's like they're so unbelievably focused. And I think that we're just seeing that Max is at his best when it's like that in those conditions. A rivalry with Lewis, a head-to-head chasing down the fastest car, but knowing you've got the second best car against the McLaren boys, blah blah blah. This year, you're kind of fourth best team. You're mixing it with a couple of the mid pack as well. Lawson's even trying to chuck it round the outside of you in the first lap. He's never really dealing with that stuff in the past. I mean, what other Red Bull teammate is trying to, let alone someone who's just stepped in? I mean, I hear everyone going, like, oh, Lawson, amazing. Oh, God, respect to the kid. And I can see that side of it. But also, you're in it for one race. The guy who's just signed a £480 million deal with that team, you're going around the outside of him. Potentially, that could cause an accident. It also could be an unbelievable move. But that's obviously further away from Max doing his mistake there. But it's just a chain reaction. Like, you're now under pressure. He's fighting off his teammate. What's he doing? Like, get out of the way, mate. Bloody hell, what you trying here? Like, let's get going, kind of thing. I just thought it was all very bit messy from Red Bull, and Max is dealing with that stuff rather than dealing with a front row start. Off he goes, focus in, domination, domination, domination. This year, he's not enjoying the regulations, but the mistakes are creeping in because he's just not focused. And I think that he thinks that he's focused. I'm sure that he is going into the race thinking I'm very focused. But I do think there's a difference between just being focused and then having this pressure cooker sort of focused thing that once you get into that, some people are just really comfortable in that zone. And I think that Max is one of those, whereas this fourth best team and you're trying to find something, it just proves that he's making these mistakes. I mean, that is in the wet as well. Like, this is Max's like creme de la creme. He would have been praying for these conditions.
Yeah. For sure. Look, I agree with everything you've said there. I wonder if he's definitely had something of like a bit of a devil may care kind of attitude, and I think Max's talent normally like makes up for that. So I'm going to use an example here of in Hungary. Max did that overtake against Lewis Hamilton, which was frankly ridiculous. I actually saw another clip of it as part of this weekend when they showed it again, and it was a ridiculous. He was so far back, and it was a ridiculous. Like, I'm just gonna. And would Max do that if he was going for the title? Yeah, I think he probably still does. But I think there was. It was his attitude towards doing the move, which was almost like sod it. You know what? I'm here now. I'm just going to send it. And like, the thing is, I'm good enough that even though I've kind of got this cavalier kind of devil may care attitude about it, like, I'm good enough that my talent will see me through. And if not, oh well, we have a crash. Like, I don't care that much because I'm only fighting over fifth or sixth place or whatever. So I do think there's a bit of that. And actually, it's interesting to compare that move to, say, Lando's move in this race, which Lando described as winning him the race, which it was a great overtake, couple of clicks rearwards on the brake bias so he can stamp on it and not lock his front tires. Very clever the way he set that up. That was and quite a similar move in some ways. But the attitude was very similar is actually quite polar opposite at the same time, because there was an element of I need to do this now, which I guess was quite similar to Max's, because he knew and it's now or never. But Max's was it's now or never. I'm just going to send it. Whereas Lando's was it's now or never, pressure moment. I need to start winning races. This is for the win. And so there's an element of focus there that kind of comes with that. And that's what I think that you're kind of alluding to here. Max is, yeah, I feel like it's almost like he's just like, yeah, he's kind of full sending it a lot more. Or I think maybe in that last corner, I think he was quite careful, but then maybe trying to, line things up a little bit better. And he just doesn't quite have that focus, because he's just like, yeah, I'll just give it full send, because most of the time that'll work out. And it doesn't have that pressure to give him that ultimate focus. I do agree with you. I do agree with you.
I think last year, like he would complain about the car because it's like not as good as the McLarens, but still a good car. And that was just Max being Max, like looking for absolute perfection.
Sure.
The car was still clearly good under him because he was getting podiums, getting race wins, chipping away at that 140 points behind. And to be able to, I don't care what anyone says, to chase down that lead, you don't just, oh, well, I'll see what happens. Like the guy truly believed that he could still beat those guys, because you wouldn't be able to do that. You have to believe, and you have to have an element of trust in the car. Now the car might not have been perfect for him last year, but he obviously believed he was better than Oscar and Norris, and he obviously believed that he could get enough out of the car to pressurize them, get on them. And then this is where we were all getting all the Chucky gifts of Max is like a horror, villain in a movie where he just doesn't stay down. But it's like, because that's Max's, where he wants to be.
You're going to say he doesn't have that belief this season, does he?
He doesn't believe it, because he wouldn't be doing. He doesn't believe it, I don't think. But he's also then moving into that realm of trying way too hard. Like the only reason you would go tight to that curb is if you thought, I will push. No one, he can see the cars in front. No one went tight. I'll go tight, get a good exit on it, get a jump on the straight, because I've I've taken that corner. I've been more risky. That's how I'm going to gain gain an advantage. He's tried it. He's crashed. It's ended, and he's like, yeah, probably. In hindsight, I probably should have just stayed with the pack. I mean, he would have literally probably finished sixth in that race anyway.
Yeah.
Looking at the pace and things, so he would have still got a chunk of points, but
not
really
that, like
bothered?
Max Verstappen doesn't care about 8 points. You know what I mean?
He's not bothered by that, is he?
And it really doesn't mean anything. That is because if you look at the, okay, so
and he also knows that again, like he's not the second team, and they just need to get back to fighting the Merc boys. They need to get back to fighting the Merc boys, the Ferrari boys, the McLaren boys. So like, there's no real hardened belief there that
no,
somewhat
and
all
there's
of a sudden,
no
not only be quicker than Antonelli, be quicker than Norris, be quicker than Lewis, be quicker than Charles, be quicker than Piastri, be quicker than Russell. It's just, I mean, it's
yeah. And if you look at where he is in the championship, I mean, he is in sixth. You could argue there's some jeopardy. He's got Oscar Piastri like 8 points behind him. So you could argue, does he want to lose out? Like, he doesn't care about whether he's sixth or seventh in the championship. He doesn't care about that. So I do think, it's just a bit cavalier.
Second is last.
It's a bit, I think, like you say, he's being a bit like, I'll try that little bit of whatever. And if it's magic, which it will be most of the time, because I'm Max Verstappen and I'm super talented, then I'm just going to do it. And obviously, I think in this race, he's like, I'll take the tighter line that nobody else can handle, but maybe I can handle it because I'm Max Verstappen, and sort of fair play for thinking it. But when he crashed,
before,
I think he was.
He's done it in the past, right? So it's not like
Yeah. So anyway,
Brazil, it looked amazing when he went on the outside around on the wet.
Yeah.
A few years ago, and it's like no one else was going out there. It's like, I will though, and I'll
Do you
Alpha can
think as
overtake you
well?
out there.
Like I mean, talking about Brazil, you've just reminded me of that spin that he had, not spin, he sort of half span, and then kind of millimeters had his front wing
Yeah,
against the barrier, and then corrected it, and he often gets, it's funny. You'd think it's almost like almost scoring an own goal, but then saving your own goal. And then people are so busy banging on about how good the save was. Like, why are we not focusing on the fact that he nearly crashed? But so maybe there's a bit of that to it too. He's like, what's the worst that can happen here? Like, I'll do an amazing save. And then even though I finish wherever I finish, people will be banging on about what a great driver I am. And it's that whole, I'm not saying that's his thought process, but I just think when there's a bit of a cavalier Max attitude because it doesn't matter, he doesn't have that focus. And so I think a lot of these kind of subconscious thoughts probably creep into his mind maybe. But
it's a
look at
funny,
us
isn't
trying
it?
to
'Cause
psychoanalyze the
but
greatest driver of all time. But
you're talking to him like as if he's like I don't think he cares what people think about his driving at
no,
the stage where I think, but I think it is. I think that I'd love to know truly if he agrees with that. Is that when, and it's a compliment. I am complimenting the guy. I'm saying that Max Verstappen is at his greatest when the pressure is at the maximum, when he needs to win. And being sixth and having to try to get up to fourth, that's not. Okay, you're trying to gain positions. There's an element of pressure that you're trying to get the maximum for your team and try to get more points and get back into it. But as we've established, like Red Bull are not winning this championship this year. Like you are not. It's almost like saying to a football team, "Oh, well, you're in form at the moment. Yeah, but maybe your first aren't in form, but second and third still are." So it's like yeah, okay, you might gain points on first, but you need to gain points on first, second, and third, and the likelihood is that is massively unlikely.
yeah,
If Ferrari and Mercedes were in the fight last year with Max, then Max wouldn't have turned over 140 points. He might have turned over 30 to the top team, but they would have lost so many more points to all the other teams that were also niggling and getting the odd win here and there. So he's just so not in it. I don't think he believes that he's in it. He'll admit that himself. And because of that, the focus, that kind of hyper focus is not there. Therefore, we're seeing Max do little errors, maybe choose the wrong decision here or there. He needs to get back into that, becoming one of the sort of top two teams where he will then believe he has a chance of the championship and therefore will be hyper focused in. And it's actually a shame to see Max like in this zone because he doesn't belong there. Like he doesn't belong in this kind of, Max is pure pressure, like pure, like can handle it kind of pressure kind of thing, like
yeah.
with the greats. So
So
it's
so
it's
let so
really,
let's talk about it then. So he's re-signed, obviously, enormous contract.
well, just before we go to that, I was
Oh, go
going
on.
to say sticking to the corner. Then
Sure.
obviously a spin. Got to quickly mention Bortoletto done his spin. You said, but Hulkenberg
Oh,
go, going through the smoke and then just being like, now I actually think that he already read it that he was going across and he had already slightly turned left. And then when he went through the smoke, he chinked again. But I'm not taking anything away from him. But everyone's like making out that he went through the smoke, full bore, and then turned left.
no,
I think if you
he's
watch it back,
pre.
he's sort of going left, goes through the smoke, and then oh yeah, I was right. I need to go left more, and then he's done it. It's still amazing to watch.
No,
Um,
incredible, and yeah,
yeah,
I think if he doesn't, I mean, it would be much less of a compliment if we were saying that he was just going into that smoke, going, yeah, well, I've no idea. Like he obviously has read the situation, and he said it himself. He was judging, is he going to go up the track or down the track, and he's made that decision correctly pre going into the cloud, and then like you say, then he was like, oh yeah, I was right. And but that all happens in such a tiny instant. So but no, fantastic. What an amazing save. And it looked from his camera angle like he definitely hit him with his front corner, but then you saw it from Bortoletto's and you can see he just missed it. So no, fair play to the Hulk. And fair
yeah,
play to
yeah,
Gabby Bortoletto because he also brought it back. And I know he didn't quite get into the points, but given where he was after that incident, the red flag, I thought he actually had a pretty good race after that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like I said, I'll keep Max. We come back to Max at the end with the
Okay,
resign because there's obviously a
fair.
couple of people that have re-signed, and we're going to sort of do that as a bit of a reaction of what we think of those after we get through the race.
Sure.
So with you mentioned a couple of overtakes. You mentioned Norris's overtake. So let's talk the McLaren boys then, only because Oscar did an unbelievable overtake.
Oh,
That's got to be my favourite undertake. Undertake. I can't even get my words. My favourite overtake. Oh, yeah, my
well, it
favourite
was an
overtake.
undertake, wasn't it? It was. He sort of nipped
Well,
underneath,
but
and
that's got to be my favourite for years.
yeah,
Generally, for years, I thought it was awesome. Like
yeah.
because it's just it felt like a go-karting move. Like you're catching them by surprise. No one overtakes here. I'm going to give it a quick boost. And I reckon it's going to work out. I think it will, and it just did. And it was like, oh, that was so sexy.
And
It
you
was
know,
like, oh,
there were a couple of times where it looked like some other drivers might do that through that
try it.
section, right, and might try it. Um, and maybe they'd seen that move, or I don't know. Maybe it was just it was clear that a lot of the drivers were using a lot more boost kind of on the straight. So then if you didn't use as
Maybe
much
the
on the
team,
straight, you had a bit more going up that hill, and it did create a possibility that is now maybe somewhere you could overtake. But it just, I mean, to do it on the first lap as well when you've
yeah,
got
yeah,
so much to lose. Oh, I thought it was absolutely fantastic, and he's had a lot of stick this year, Oscar, for being somewhat in Lando, being miles off of Lando, and actually after that overtake,
yeah.
he
That's the
went
thing.
back to being back off Lando.
Yeah,
But
you thought when
credit
he
for that
did that,
moment.
you thought, oh, he looks a bit tasty today, and you
Yeah,
were almost expecting him to come into that play of kind of the two Ferraris, Lando, Antonelli, George, um, Norris, and he didn't, and it was like,
no,
oh, I kind of, I thought, wow, like you've done that, and then you've just gone, and I mean, I think it was Oscar, wasn't it, where I think he lost like two positions in like a matter of laps. I think that was it maybe the both Ferraris passed him or something like that, I
yes.
think. And it was like, oh, like not really.
But I didn't really feel like he had much of a defence because of his tyre situation. Where the team really didn't help him out there. He after the red flag, he went onto the hards, and you were thinking that's a genius play as long as he doesn't lose any places at the start, which he didn't. Then you're thinking, hey, Oscar's in the business here because he's on the hard tyre. He can maybe do a one stop, but if he's going to do a two stop, he can absolutely gun it on his other set of tyres, have a real offset and all that. And then they brought in, who did they bring in first? Was it George? And then immediately they were like, oh well, let's bring in Oscar.
Yes,
It
that's
was
right. Yeah,
and
yeah. So
it was like, what
I
are you
thought that.
doing?
Yeah,
That's not the play. That's not the
no,
play at
yeah,
all. It didn't make any sense that they brought in Oscar so quickly on the hard
yeah.
tyres. And he was looking really good. After that, he basically didn't do anything, and that was sort of under that.
That actually messed me up when I was watching it because you're trying to work out what team's doing what strategy, and there was lots of position changes because there were sort of like different pits happening at different times. And then when I saw him coming, I was like, it just confused me, and I was
Yeah,
like, hang on,
it was a very
the,
confusing
the,
thing
the
to do.
hard the hard was for you to go longer.
Yeah,
Are we now saying? And then I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm getting this wrong here, but it's almost like I didn't feel like the commentators or anyone really knew what strategy. Normally, you're sort of like, oh, this is probably going to be a solid two stop today, or oh, they're going to
yeah.
try one. We'll see how that goes. I felt like no one knew for a
Well,
long
Bernie,
time
Bernie on Sky Sports
what was
was
going.
she was well confused because she was saying Oscar's definitely on a one stop, and I think she thought a lot of the other drivers were going to do a one stop, and then obviously like Oscar comes in and she's like, oh, and then so she was then confused as hell. Like this is, I guess it's a two stop race, and all of it was it was a confusing move from McLaren. And I think it showed a little bit of naivety because they were like, oh, if our fight here is with George, I don't think their fight was ever with George necessarily. I mean, maybe a little bit, but I thought their fight was really with the Ferraris. And actually, if they'd have finished first and fourth, for example, I think that would have been a pretty good result for them. I think they reacted to George, which they didn't need to do. Ferrari didn't need to do. Ferrari didn't do it. we'll get onto Ferrari because what were they doing with Charles Leclerc anyway? But like, you know,
Yeah.
it didn't make any sense. You've set Oscar up for this game plan, and at the very least, give him a tyre offset. Now, you could argue if they don't mess the pit stop up, then Oscar gets out in front of George, and therefore maybe that changes his race. But it's not like George was holding him up after that. He just pace wise, he just fell away, and I just thought it was a silly strategical choice from the team. So yeah, Oscar didn't drive brilliantly after that first stint, but I think the strategy really didn't help him at all.
No, no. And then again with Norris, I mean, I heard someone say it, and I was thinking the exact same thing, and I agree. I almost feel like he's driving better this year than he did last year.
Oh, I-
You
a
know,
100%. And we talked about which drivers are suiting these new cars and which were their eras. And Lando is increasingly looking like, you know, these cars really suit him. He seems to be able to get the maximum out of it. Maybe
I
it's
mean, people
just
are
that
saying
Oscar's really not getting anything out of it at all.
mm,
But it really looks like Lando and Kimi are the two. Lando, Kimi,
maybe
and Lewis are the three in the top teams that are really loving this generation of car, or at least hating it less than their teammates.
mm, mm. I mean, I still think Charles is a lot closer to Lewis than what you do. I think that
He shows
but we
moments,
get
doesn't he? I mean, the
we get
sprint
on, we get onto them. We get onto them.
the sprint
Um,
certainly was favourable for him, and he's definitely coming back. I will say
yeah.
he is
I
coming
mean, I
back.
mean, Norris. Some people were saying it's his best win ever. I still think Mexico was just so dominant at Mexico last year, where the pressure was really on, and it was like he was just smashed it and like won by a country mile and just dominated the whole weekend. So I'd probably say that still for me is well certainly his most dominating race. I get what they're saying in the sense that this is a race that probably he I mean, Mexico, for instance, he was expected to win. At least one of the McLarens were expected to win. Whereas this he's not really expected to win this race, and he's just been very quick. So I do
Mm.
understand that, and for
I think it
that
was
reason,
also
that
that
makes me why this is
overtake.
best.
He mentioned that overtake a bunch of times, saying that that's
Because
what
he had to
the
sort
win.
of slide into that pocket, didn't he? Like, as he went round, it wasn't just a case of overtaking the other one and then off you go. You almost had to do the overtake, then stop in the middle of the two of them, in the middle of Hamilton and Antonelli, and then later obviously get Hamilton. But he had to sort of just get himself into that gap. It was
It
it
was
was
quite.
very
It was. I think the reason that
measured, very measured.
he's saying this is his greatest win. I think the reason he was talking about that move a lot. It's not a very Lando move. You know, it looked a little bit Max-esque. Hence why I actually thought it was quite similar to that Max Hungary overtake that he did on Lewis. And I thought, it was very similar in that it had to happen. That was the only moment he could do it. He needed to make sure that he got Kimi before Kimi put a Ferrari between them. And it was a brilliant piece of car control. And I love how he thought his way to it. You know, that he
Mm.
was like, I'm going to sort
I
out the brake
I
bias, and I
I loved
know
how
I'm
he
going to go
explained that
deep
as well.
and round the outside. And it was like, I think it was a bit of a breakthrough moment for him, which is why he feels so emotionally proud of himself that he's won that race, because I think he's thinking that's a race I don't with that's a move I don't make last
Oh,
year.
he's properly beat the better team and a few drivers that are
On it.
roughly around him. So
And
so
on it.
you know
Kimi is
yeah,
absolutely on it.
on it.
And
He knows that Lewis is second in the championship. Like to get and to do those, and again to completely outperform his teammate, um, is always going to make you feel good. So yeah, he's just absolutely loving it, and I liked how he was very kind of like cool, calm about it all, and I loved how he described the overtake. He didn't just say, "Yeah, had to get it done in that moment." Did this? Like he's like you say, two clicks down on the brake settings, did this, did that, and then team himself up for it. I was like, oh, I like that how you're like explaining that. Really thought of that. And as you say, I think he's very proud that he sort of did that. Some people might sort of say like, oh well, come on, like maybe Max does that all the time, kind of thing. So like, don't get you want to almost like have a bit more arrogance that like, well, yeah, I'm a world champion. Why wouldn't I do that kind of thing? So, but at the same time, Norris has never been like that. He's always kind of been like too much information, talks, and that. But I thought it was positive. I liked hearing it. It's different. You don't normally hear drivers explain how they did something. They just are happy with what they did. And
Yeah.
maybe they're so good they feel like they don't need to explain it. But as a fan, it was just nice to know. I've never heard someone say, I put the brake settings 2 clicks down and did this. It was like, oh, what's that? So it was
Yeah.
like, I wanted to know, oh, okay, I just thought you put the brakes on, mate. But
Yeah.
clearly, so it was like I say, yeah, the fact that it was very thought out. It wasn't just oh, I'll take it now. He knew it was coming. He set it up, got the settings right, did it, stuck it, job done, lovely. Moved on, got the lead, won the race. So yeah, spot on. Norris really, really impressive this weekend, and we both predicted he'd win.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
So yeah, fair play to us. Fair play to us.
We
So
also said that Behrman would get top 10 and he didn't qualify well, wasn't racing particularly well, and then retired. So we don't get them all
ignore that.
right. We are barely
Ignore
qualified,
that.
but
Ignore
we're,
that.
we got this
Yeah,
one right.
yeah.
Fair play to us.
And obviously we had Max in there as well, didn't we? I think we actually had Oscar in there as well, didn't we? So
We both had both McLarens, but you put Max on the podium. I didn't. I can't remember who I put in. I want to say Lewis.
Lewis, I think you went for.
And so I wasn't a million miles wrong with that. Although, we'll get onto the Ferraris then. Maybe that's a good segue onto the Ferraris because is this
Yeah.
a bit of a? I mean, it's certainly one podium place. I think Kimi only pitted because he knew he was only going to lose place to George, and he knew we'd get that place back due to the old team orders, right? So bit of a no-brainer, and I don't think either Ferrari would have caught Kimi without him coming in. So fair enough, but there was definitely at least one podium spot there for the Ferraris, and they definitely seemed to throw that away somewhat. But not just in that moment with the team orders. The team orders we can come to, but I more thought just the general strategy. I mean, I agree that I thought Charles Leclerc arguably was actually looking like the better racer this weekend. But on Sunday he didn't, he just never seemed to, Lewis always had fresher tyres than him and always seemed
He
to
got
have
the jump. Even at the start, he got the jump on Lewis, didn't he?
Yeah, exactly. And I thought he was looking pretty good, but they brought Leclerc in. They were going to do the offset, but then decided to bring him in and basically give him no offset, confusing as hell. Then they're in this really awkward situation where Lewis has got fresher tyres at the end of their stint, and Lewis has caught Charles up because they put Charles in this kind of bad strategy. And they're like, well, we'll just pit Charles to get him out of the way, which it was a terrible time to pit him again because it was going to give him no offset. And they just seemed to kind of throw Charles under the bus in this race.
Do you think they're scared to give team orders? So what you're saying there, do you think that if they said, "Oh, Charles, let Lewis pass, but we are going to keep you out longer to give you an offset," that's almost worse than actually pitting him?
No, yeah, I think they think that that's worse, and that they can't do team orders, and that if they ask one of them to move out of the way, that. I also think maybe there's a bit of a historical legacy thing going on there because historically, when it's come to those team orders, they've always taken a couple of laps to actually make those decisions, and they kind of talk through it too much. And then, so maybe their whole thing was, right, we're just going to box him and then we won't get into the discussion with team orders. It didn't need a discussion. It just needed look, he's on a different strategy to you. He's got fresher tyres than you. Let your teammate pass, and honestly, you're going to lose. Maybe you'll lose a second letting him pass.
Because
right?
Lewis mentioned after the race as well, didn't he, that he felt like he lost 7 seconds.
Yeah, and I think maybe 7 seconds is a little stretch, but he definitely lost quite a lot. I mean, maybe certainly 5 seconds, I would say, and I think Charles probably would have lost a second letting him pass. But then, if he can try and stay in the overtake mode, maybe he gets some of that back. And I think more than that, I think if he pits 3, 4, 5 laps later than he did, I think he gains that second back by just being on a better strategy and having some fresher tyres and actually being able to attack at the end. So I don't know. I think Ferrari really balls
Lewis
this
got a
one up.
bit he got a little bit shitty, didn't he, when he said I think he said something like, I don't know if it was in this moment or when Charles was maybe coming up behind him, but he was sort of saying, "Oh, have you just used me as a guinea pig?" Do you remember that?
Yes. Well, I think he was worried because they were keeping him out for. So having pitted Charles and decided they're not going to give him any tyre offset, they then basically left Lewis out. And I think Lewis clocked it that actually they were wondering if Lewis could go to the end. And because some other teams had commented, I think Bernie had come on and said, maybe Lewis is going to the end here. And it didn't really seem like it was on. And I think they were just thinking, if we just leave him out there long enough, maybe he'll like make it happen. And he basically called their bluff and was like, "Am I a guinea pig? Like, what's happening here?" Like, so eventually they pulled him in. Yeah, the whole thing was. I just think Ferrari weren't quite at the races
Which
for that.
again sort of told me there was no plan for Lewis. It was like, oh well, he's having a go at us. We better bring him in then. Because even they were also on team radio when they were saying to Charles, they were saying box, box, and he was like, "What do you mean box? What do you like?" He goes, "Yeah, box." He's like, so even Charles didn't understand why he boxed me. And then you had the situation where they then have the VSC at the end, where they then double stack them. Now, if you were Charles, I suppose because Lewis is in front at that stage, if you then don't pit Charles, then Lewis, I was going to say, Charles, could he not say, well, I don't want to pit, I want to stay out for track position? But I suppose that wouldn't really work anyway. I suppose Lewis then would get on the fresh tyres and
Yeah,
pass him.
but at that point, Leclerc. Now, you forgive me if I'm wrong here, but I believe I'm correct. So Charles was ahead of George, but still, but they decided to. But George had pitted a lot later, and so had some fresh rubber on, right? I think, and I think they pitted Charles because they were like, "We'll put the fresh rubber on, and then we'll go and get George," which obviously never happened. So, uh, yeah, maybe I was slightly wrong on that. My memory of the race
Yeah,
was a little bit fuzzy, but
yeah,
it
it's
definitely,
all got confusing.
I was definitely confused that they decided to go down the double stack route, and I felt like they did that because it saves a headache.
An awkward conversation.
And
Yeah,
they did it in Monaco
but
as well, right? That was the thing in Monaco. They did like the double stack where they did both of them, and then that basic. But Lewis had a penalty, and so that kind of punished Charles to a certain degree. But yeah, I feel like they've just got this. If there's an opportunity for us to pit somebody, it doesn't matter if it kind of screws them over a little bit. We'll take that opportunity to pit them because it stops us having this awkward team orders conversation that we don't
yeah,
want to have with our drivers. And I just feel like they could. I mean, we've talked before about papaya rules and all of that. Like the great thing about McLaren is that they have very very clear orders, and you saw Lewis talk about the fact that George questioned letting Kimi through, but he was made clear like this is happening. And I do agree there's a certain part of you, there's a certain part of me that thinks like, come on, George, you could fight that a little bit harder. But actually he knows what the rules are and they stick
well,
to them.
we'll get to that.
And
We
we'll
get
get
to
to
that.
that. But like I guess
I
that's what Lewis is
we,
looking at. He's looking over the garden fence and he's going, these guys know what they're doing and they have a plan before the race. And if the team says you move out of the way, then you can question it, you can argue it, but then you do it. And that if both drivers just have that agreement, then and we'll sort it out later, then they can, I think he's just wishing that they had that at Ferrari, and they clearly don't, and they clearly will do
yeah, yeah.
anything to avoid having to give a team order.
I mean, with Lewis as well. After I noticed in his interview in the Pen, I quite like that he's very clever, Lewis, because he's this sort of personality of, oh, I'm a nice guy, like Mission 44, and like I'm just loving life and I'm chill, and I'm going to be sort of criticizing, and but then also not get like too carried away when I'm winning, and I've got just a nice casual smile, and I'm just nice, you know. But he was saying, like in the pen, you know, I come to this team. I want this team to win. I'm here to win. I'm not here to finish what I'm finishing. This is why I joined. I'm here to. I'm here to lead this team to a championship, and I'm, you know, wanting to lead them to the top of the drivers' championship. And he was talking a lot about like, you know, what I'm gonna do and why I've come here and I'm going to lead and I thought it was very clever because I think he's saying it in a way of like Ferrari, are you listening kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? Like he's like doing an interview with Sky, but he's not saying like, you know, like me and Charles want to push this team on. You know, we want to win a championship for Ferrari. We want to do this, which is probably what Carlos Sainz and Leclerc would do to each other. Whereas Lewis is saying, I've joined to win them a championship. I've come to push them on to win, and I want to lead them to do this. And it's like, you know what you're doing. Like
Yeah,
and I thought, I
it's
like
quite
that. I like that.
Schumacher-esque as well, right? Like when Schumacher joined Ferrari, he talked about in exactly the same way. He talked about I'm going to get Ferrari their title that they've been sorely wanting all those years, and you know, now that we know what happened with that, you know, we don't even think
It's
about his
almost
teammate, right? We just
he's almost
know
testing them.
that was Schumacher, and Schumacher did all of that. Now, how true is that? Like, you know, I'm sure, I'm sure Schumacher definitely was a huge part of that. But you know, it's a team game, and there are hundreds of people at the track each week, and thousands of people back at the factory, even back in those days. But I'd like you say, I love taking that personal ownership and him being like, you know, I'm Lewis Hamilton. You know, I win things, and I've come to this team to win things, and I'm not here to be teaming up with Charles Leclerc and we'll do it together. It's like I will do this, and I'm dragging this team up. And actually, like you can kind of see, he's been fighting for things to have things his own way, and
Yeah,
perhaps
and he's it's a mentality thing, isn't it? Like you know, you say, is it? Well, yeah. Do you know what? I completely believe that Schumacher, when he came into Ferrari, yes, you had to have the great engineers, you had to have the great aero guy, and you know Ross Brawn, everyone who played a part. But the mindset, do not underrate the mindset
hundred
that
percent.
Schumacher would have put into not only the you know the pit guys and his engineers, but also the management and you know, they that stuff is addictive. Do you know what I mean? Like they, you know, Red Bull had that. I was literally thinking, and I want to mention this actually. Actually, I'll save it for when we talk about Max re-signing because I wanted to talk a little about mentality and people leaving teams and joining others and all this sort of stuff. And I had a bit of a question for you, but yeah, no doubt, Schumacher, that mentality of like that, and obviously Schumacher's more of a hardened type like that, whereas almost Lewis is like people. I suppose he gets people to sort of like, I suppose like fall in love with him, like you know, like and then they also know that he means business, and there's obviously like a special talent in Lewis, but also it's that kind of um you want to do it for him. And there's a couple of I found this, you know, the older I've gotten doing different um, team leader roles and things, is I always used to think personally that there was one way to lead, or the best way to lead, should I say, was to be um, not arrogant, but confident and assertive and very kind of like more from a more dominating point of view of setting a little bit Roy Keane, you know, setting the bar high, demanding um, levels and setting everyone's expectations to a higher standard, and that's how you push a team on a lead. But actually, you can also do it in the way that you want people to sort of, I suppose, die for you. You know, you want them to, they love you so much that they will push themselves for you, you know. And so it's sort of another way of doing that. And Lewis is very good at doing it that way. And I would imagine that Max, Schumacher, people like that are very good at doing it in the other way.
Yeah.
Um, so, yeah, I think that Lewis, you know, Charles, they all love Charles because he's sort of like their boy and he's been there. But if Lewis is talking like that, and the mindset is different to a Charles, and it's going to be. If you've won 7 world championships and you've won none, you might be really talented and you might want to do it, but people are also going to say, look, Charles, we love you. You're our boy. But this guy,
Yeah,
has won 7 world championships, and
why are you hiring
he's
him if you're not going
he's
to use him?
inspiring me, man. He's
Yeah,
inspiring me, man. I'm falling for it. The spell, he's casting a spell on me, and Hamilton. That stuff takes time. Like people have been loyal to Charles for years, and I'm sure they continue to be so. But Lewis needs to cast a spell on Ferrari to go down his direction and believe in him. And if he starts winning and they start saying, "Well, we've trusted you a bit more, and you are paying us back," that bond and that will only get stronger.
yeah, for
A
sure.
little bit like the whole Kimi and Mercedes thing. Like you can. Russell's been there longer than Kimi. Russell's more experienced with him. But Kimi's casting a spell on that team to just, as we've said many times, the team's Kimi's anyway. But you okay, on to the Mercedes boys, and as we quickly mentioned them, the team orders then. So I think that you'll probably have a better answer than this for me, and I think I might have missed something here from what you just said. And also, I picked up on what George said. And I don't know if he's just saying it because he's meaning that he had better tyres, but he was saying that Kimi was ahead of me, and this is where I might have lost something in the race. But so my understanding, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, I thought so Russell's ahead. He's on obviously worse tyres. Kimi comes up behind, and they're pretty much like, look, just let him through. They were talking about that he could hunt down Norris, which is utter bollocks. There was nowhere near enough laps left. He would have to be doing like a 1.3 seconds quicker, 1.4 seconds quicker than him to even get into a battle with him, which was just never going to happen. Like Norris wasn't dropping off a cliff, and Antonelli, wasn't going to do that. So for me, I was thinking, what if he wants to get past me and finish second in this race? Then he can overtake me. And then I heard people saying after the race, like, oh yeah, but you don't want him to draw the Ferrari boys in and then put both their positions. But it's like, no, yeah, that's exactly what you want to do. Because if you are holding up Antonelli and the Ferrari boys somewhat get past Antonelli, then that's going to take time for one. Now, if they get past Antonelli and then very quickly then get past you, George, yes, it won't work. But you know what? What have you got to lose? Why not try that? Right? It's better than let your teammate pass, right? So do you then not? Okay, and then someone said, well, yeah, but then he's like cemented third. But then he didn't cement third because then he came under pressure from Lewis and Charles. So he's opened himself up to now having to defend 2 Ferraris rather than having a buffer there, which was Kimi. So in my eyes, I'd have been like, look, I'm hunting for this world championship. 2, Kimi's not going to win this race. So he can pass me fair and square. If he overtakes me, then fair enough. But I'm not letting him pass. And 3, it's working in my favour to keep him there because if the Ferrari boys come, then I've got a buffer between me and them. And by the time they do get past Kimi, because I'm assuming that Kimi's also not just going to let them past, so he's going to be defending like a beast, which means that laps are just going to be going laps and laps and laps and laps. And Russell's there sitting there going, keep defending, Kimi. This is great for me. I'm keeping my position. So I don't, unless I've completely missed something there.
So you have missed.
I don't understand.
What
have I missed?
So basically, it's getting towards the end of the race. The VSC happens now. Kimi's side of the garage know that there's only going to be so many laps left, and the only way that he can pit and then potentially catch and do something with Norris is if he puts a soft tyre on. But he doesn't have a new soft tyre. He's only got a soft tyre that he's qualified on, right? So now it's only had 3 laps on it, but one of those laps is a full out, take loads of life out of the tyre, which is like the worst possible thing you can do for a tyre for its longevity, right? So they're like, right, it's a huge gamble for us to pit Kimi, but he's not getting Lando, right? Lando has passed him, and that's it. He's never going to get him.
Right. So when they pitted,
so what they're thinking is they're thinking, right? Okay, so we'll do a bit of a Hail Mary, right? We'll stick Kimi on this tyre. We don't think it's going to work because it's had a qualifying lap done on it, and it's probably not going to win the race. But the worst thing that could possibly happen is he falls behind George, but we'll just tell George to get him out of the way. So it's a completely free hit for him to, like, let's try something, and it didn't work. So that's the situation. If they thought for a second that George wouldn't move out of the way, or if George wasn't a teammate, right? If George was Lewis in a Ferrari, then they just don't pit, right? And so that's the reason why it was like, no, these team orders are happening. The only kind of thing that you could have thought that I thought they might do was to say to Kimi, right, George is going to let you through. Could you please strategically slow down at the end of each lap to let George within that 1 second so that he gets overtake mode, and that'll help him down the straight. But I can also see why they might be like, look, that's dodgy. And if if Lewis gets past George, he'll then be right on the back of Kimi with overtake mode when Kimi could have just scampered up the road. And at the very least, George will hold up Lewis and or Charles. If they get past, Kimi will have disappeared far enough up the road that it won't be a problem. And at least then we'll get one podium. So I understand from George's perspective, he's thinking like, well, I'm now ahead of my teammate, etc. But their argument is and will be to him once he goes into the debrief.
He wouldn't have been. They would have just kept him out in front of George.
Yeah, exactly. And then he would have finished second
and not attempted anything.
Yeah, he would have finished second easily if he hadn't have pitted. So they were like, it was a go at trying to win the race.
Yeah. Okay. Calm me down a bit.
Yeah, and then when you realize, because I was the same as you, I was like, George, why would you let him past? And why would you do that? But then if you kind of rewind the clock and go, oh yeah, it's
because I suppose you're thinking normally the lead car gets priority on pit stops, right? So if the lead car pits, that doesn't actually mean that you have to let them pass. Often they pitted and then they're on a better tyre and they would just pass you naturally anyway. And
I think Kimi would have passed him as well. Like I think it would have been hard, but I think I think if Lewis hadn't had the VSC at the end, which George also managed really well. Literally, as that ended, he managed to get it.
Well, Lewis was about to take him, like literally, wasn't he?
Yeah,
he was literally about to overtake him.
And then the VSC happens with the debris.
I'm pretty sure they was even next to each other, weren't they? And then it just went.
It was close. I think he was really sizing him up. So he
would have. I think he pulled out.
He definitely would have got him.
Slow down.
So Kimi would have got George anyway. So they're basically saying like, look, there's no point. Now you're right. They could have tried to use Kimi as a bit of a roadblock to block the Ferrari.
Or Kimi would have been behind. Or Kimi would have still been behind Russell with the VSC, and then when they restarted. Russell could have kept Kimi and Lewis behind,
but from Kimi's perspective, I get
Kimi would have been under pressure.
He would have been like, and if Kimi had been overtaken by the Ferraris, he would have then been like, so guys, I had guaranteed second. You decided to pit me for this. We're going to go for the win, Hail Mary,
yeah.
And I've ended up finishing fifth. Like you've completely screwed me over it.
Yeah. My teammate was behind me.
Whereas if you'd have just let me pass George, I'd have finished second. Maybe he finishes third. Maybe he finishes fifth. But that's fair for him to finish fifth because that's what would have happened for him anyway.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So it definitely looked worse than it because I was totally in your camp. But yeah, that was the bit that you missed.
Yeah. Okay. I think the whole race just generally confused me.
It was a very confusing race.
It really did. I was like, I just could not keep up with the amount of. As I said it a couple of weeks ago, didn't I? I said with this new rule set, because you're following, the gaps of DRS. That if they're in 4/10, we're all good. We're having an overtake, and I get it. That's a bit more boring. It's a bit more safe. It's a bit more like where you are. But when you've got all these different overtakes that might happen, and they don't have, or there's an undercut, or they're pitting earlier, they're going onto the hards. It was a full kind of on, and also you're trying to see who the challenger might be, because one minute it was Lando, then it was, maybe it was going to be Russell, then the Ferrari boys were coming back into it. So, which again, I understand that that's all exciting, but it's almost like, how some people love Game of Thrones because there's like multiple storylines, but then there's also a lot of people that don't like it because there's too many storylines.
Is it? I wonder though. Is it because it's definitely a little bit the new regulations, but I think is also happening here is we've got smaller wheels this year, right? Like narrower tires, and supposedly the compounds are the same, but they've gone a step. Like, so the C2 from last year is the C3 from this year, or the other way around. I can't remember which way around it is, but like fundamentally, Pirelli say, but it's the same tire, it's the same compounds, and but because they're smaller, like we're seeing in the sprint, for example, Charles Leclerc at the end of the sprint on a soft is overtaking Lando Norris on a medium. But but the medium should be better now because it should be lasting longer than the soft. And then you also heard that but one of the things that Bernie said during Sunday's race was because I can't remember which driver it was, but because driver A of one of the leading teams was on the hard tire, and the other driver was on the soft tire, that the person on the hard tire was actually able to go quicker because through the high-speed corners, they could lean on the tire more because they're not trying to preserve their tire life. So the hard tire is actually faster. And I feel like there's lots of stuff like that going on with the tires this year, where it's like the ordinary logic, which is that the soft is the fastest but will degrade the quickest, is now not necessarily true anymore. It may be slower, but also can go longer, because if you drive it slower, then it will go longer. And there's like all these permutations that are happening. And so you're ending up in this situation where you're going, wait, I thought that a medium would just be better than a hard, but that does not seem to regularly be the case this season. It adds to this kind of, like you say, this sense of confusion. Like, wait, I thought Oscar being on a hard at the restart meant that it was guaranteed that he'd go long and that he'd be slower, but that he would be able to go longer, and that's the play. But then it all blows up in your face because they pit him and you can't understand any of it. And then you're so confused. And you're like, what's the strategy here? And I don't know whether the teams know. Honestly, it seems like one set of tyres are great on a car, and then the same set of tyres, but obviously a different set, but the same compound of tyres, then all of a sudden are crap. And I don't know. There just seems to be something.
There was a team that didn't even. It might have been, was it Red Bull or someone? They didn't even go for the hard tire. And everyone was like, "Oh, how come you didn't go for them?" Or something like that.
Yeah. Well, and also look at. I mean, actually, it wasn't on your notes, but we've got to have a bit of a conversation about Alonso, which doesn't have to be now. But like Alonso finished ninth, but he finished the race. He did like 40 something laps on the set of hards. Now, in a race where the constant conversation was pitting and putting the fresh rubber on is definitely the way to go, somehow Alonso managed to make it so that wasn't the case. And I asked the question, is the Aston Martin really good on its tyres? And you came back quite rightly and said, well, yeah, but the Aston Martin's also going really slowly. Maybe that's why it's good on its tyres, because it's not going fast enough. But they're definitely going a bit faster now, and they still seem to be great on their tyres. So maybe that is just a quirk of the Aston Martin car.
That's a good point. It's a good point.
But Alonso, yeah, I mean, he just totally flipped the script on this general conceived truth that came out through the race, which was that going a little bit longer and then having fresh rubber was the smart thing to do. Alonso just didn't do that at all and ends up finishing ninth. Yeah, okay, bit of luck with the VSC, but
yeah. I mean, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I still rate it, I suppose. It's going to sound harsh, but it's almost like, again, I could have put loads of notes on the notes, right? But it's like, I mean, this is probably the end of the conversation. Yeah, Alonso was in ninth.
Yeah.
It doesn't change anything.
No.
Doesn't do anything. I mean, it's happened before with Alonso. Yeah, massively impressive.
But and it's like thumbs up, but like, well done, you're still 10th in the World Championship. You're only beating Cadillac, who have no points and look like they're never going to get any points. So you've gone from 1 to 3, but you're still miles away from Williams, and they look crap. but like, you know, they could probably sneak an odd point here or there as well. So well done, you've got ninth, and it is nice to see him back up there. I guess that, you know, that's why I'm mentioning it. It's just great that he's
Oh yeah,
back
yeah.
up there. But
It's
that's the end of
very
the
very
conversation. You're
impressive.
right.
Yeah,
It's like
and I suppose the fact that it's Alonso, it to his own detriment then becomes a little bit because he is so good. Whereas like if we were talking like Lance Stroll being ninth, you'd be like, what the fuck has happened here? Like,
I mean, you would be thinking that a lot.
um,
But don't worry, Lance
um,
Stroll once again did not finish this race.
no, no, no.
Bless him.
So with the middle of the pack, I've just put here little question, the middle of the pack. So I don't know if you remember, I think it was the two racing bulls. It was Sonoda. Sonoda done a great overtake as well, didn't he? By the
Oh,
way.
we did, yeah.
It was the two racing bulls. It was Gasly and it was Hulkenberg.
It
No,
what it
not Hulkenberg.
Yeah, it was. No, it was Hulkenberg,
Was it
and
Hulkenberg?
ultimately that move. So it basically went Racing Bull, uh, who hadn't yet been in the pits. Then it was Gasly. Then it was the Hulk. Then it was the other Racing Bull of
'Cause
Sonoda.
the two racing bulls got past Gasly, didn't they?
Yeah. So
Gasly
so
lost two positions.
so
Then
So Gasly was trying to get past Lindblad, couldn't do it. Then Hulkenberg did for Gasly and then got past Lindblad. But then Sonoda also got past Gasly. So I mean, with a fantastic move. Yeah, it was great, and ultimately Sonoda got ahead of Lindblad. But was that because he had a penalty? I can't remember. But anyway, I remember looking at it. Now I had Gasly in my grid rivals as a turbo driver, and I was watching this going, "No, Gasly, you're supposed to be going forwards." He did actually manage to get all of them, apart from Nico Hulkenberg, back by the end of the race and finish in 10th, but he did get beaten by Fernando Alonso. Now that would have been one hell of a turbo driver in grid rivals, but yeah, it was a great piece of racing. And obviously you said at the top of the show, it's in your notes, why aren't we getting this at the top? I would almost argue we've had some of this kind of yo-yoing around at the top in various points through the season. But it was great racing,
well,
wasn't it? It was
yeah.
brilliant.
I mean, I suppose what I was thinking was like more specifically like in this race. I kept thinking that with the sprint race being quite boring, you then had this, and that was one of a few kind of middle of the pack battles. I just kept thinking, why are we not, maybe in this race, why are we not seeing there be more of a battle some of the with some of the teams? I mean, I suppose people were going to argue that when Norris then came back and did his overtake, got between Lewis, but they were, maybe I'm being a bit harsh there, but I just when I saw how close those guys were staying, and I remember the commentator saying, "It is not over, it's not over," because it just kept going on and on and on, and I was thinking, it could have just been a sequence of racecraft, but for those cars. But I was just, it would be lovely to have seen that happening up front,
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
And I was just thinking like they seem to be a bit. You've got Norris out in front, then you've then got the Mercedes boys, and obviously Anthony was allowed to pass, and then you did have the Ferraris hunting down the Mercedes, but it seems to be all in their neat little parts. Whereas that was just rammed here. Everyone's going, and I thought, God, wouldn't that be great if it was here? Um,
You're always more
and
likely to get that in the midfield, though, and it's a phenomenon that happens because the the leaders of the race are always governed in their pit stops by when the midfielders um, when the midfielders finally pit, right? Like that's because they're looking for gaps
gaps,
to
yeah.
to drop into. Otherwise, it's going to ruin their strategy and ruin their race, right? So, yeah, so like in the midfield, you tend to get a lot more variability in strategy. Whereas up front, you're literally governed by, are you going quick enough? Can you create and then find a gap to slot into by the time of the first pit? So you're always more likely to get those gaggles of slightly different like tire offsets. And whereas up front, typically the car that's fastest will qualify fastest and then normally has the best race car. That's happened a little less this year, and actually Zandvoort was a really great example. I actually thought that the fastest race car in race trim was probably the Ferraris, probably at Zandvoort, but they qualified so badly that they were never really able to show that pace. Maybe you could say Lando's race pace was better than, so maybe the two Ferrari, but I think the two Ferraris were quicker than the two Mercedes. It's just that because of strategy and the fact that they were having to fight with George and Oscar and react in those pit stops, that they didn't execute maybe as well as they could have. But I definitely thought the Ferrari was
they're losing on the straights, aren't they, the Ferrari?
Yes.
They're losing on the straights.
I mean, it'd be really interesting to see what happens at Monza, and there's been a lot of chat that Monza is going to be Kimi's race and that the Italians have given up on Ferrari and they just want Kimi to win. Which would, they've always loved Italian drivers, but Monza in particular has always been a track that's all about the Tifosi and all about Ferrari.
I mean, Ferrari is
it's like a national team, isn't it? It's not.
I get that Kimi is Italian, but no doubt they would absolutely.
But I think there's so much goodwill for him in Italy and probably everywhere, but particularly in Italy, that I think it would be close. Be interested to see if he wins, and I think he's got a great chance of winning because Ferrari, they don't look fast on the straight.
I think if Lewis was chasing down Antonelli in the last lap, I think they'd be going mental for Ferrari.
Yeah, agreed. I still think that's the case. I just think
the third option is a Ferrari 1-2, and if they've got to pick anyone, it'd be great to see Kimi in third place on the podium. But yeah, I think if no Ferrari gets on the podium and Kimi wins it, it's like, well, look, it's the next best thing. But yeah, no doubt they absolutely will want Ferrari winning that race. Oh my God, you've taken me off my thing now. I had I'll do that later. I had a question for you, which I did a quiz today, an F1 question. Absolutely smashed it. I want to see if you do the same.
Okay.
Right. So going to rattle through these quickly then. So Norris, can he win the championship?
Yes, he definitely can by just doing the maths. Can he win the championship? I genuinely think he's got the best chance, because I think it's interesting hearing Toto Wolff saying that they don't have the money, or they don't have the cap. They don't have the budget cap. They've obviously got the money, but he kind of afterwards said in the press conference that McLaren seem to be spending all their money now, whereas we spend our money more evenly, and so maybe we don't have as much money as McLaren clearly have for all these upgrades. Don't know what the
politic games.
Don't really know what the situation is there. But it's interesting. It's interesting that Toto's saying that. It basically alludes to this idea that he thinks the McLaren is going to keep developing and be faster for the rest of the season now.
And they're probably overspending.
And maybe they're overspending, whatever. Who knows? But I what I'm reading into that is simply that, he thinks the McLaren will be quick for the rest of the season. And might overtake the Mercedes, not just at tracks favourable to McLaren, but in general. So I think there's a chance. I think if anyone's got the chance, it's weird to say that the driver currently sitting in fourth and quite a way off second and third, that he's my favourite pick to challenge Kimi. But I just think in the Kimi versus George, Kimi just looks so unflappable. And I think that the Ferrari looks fallible. And I think some of the old cracks are coming out at Ferrari. And the McLaren's just two race wins on the bounce. Lando is looking imperious.
I mean, that makes sense, doesn't it? McLaren are double world champions.
And they've got a history of doing this, of developing really well through the year.
So that's not a surprise. And Ferrari, i- they look like they've improved. This if the season stopped right now, Ferrari have improved.
Yeah,
But for them to jump a double world champion in McLaren, that would be impressive.
yeah,
And to suddenly do it out of nowhere is probably unrealistic to think that could happen. Like that, McLaren have got the team, they've got
what I will say is,
proven winners in that now. They are the best team,
yeah,
as proven over the last 2 years. Red Bull have absolutely, as they say, had a brain drain. Mercedes have been out of it for a while. McLaren, you have to back them as the best all round team. But I don't think I really want Norris to give it a push. But it's the same thing with Lewis. I said a couple of weeks ago. There's just too many other
ye-
drivers that can take points off of Norris, and it
agreed.
doesn't matter if Kimi finishes third or second or fourth here and there. He has a lead. He'll build up the points, and all these other drivers will take him away. Norris has to win four in a row, four in a row, or two in a row again in a couple of weeks, but also be finishing second in between. He
Yeah,
needs to be doing, you know, and I just don't see that happening. I don't see
I
him
to-
finishing constantly against
I
Lewis,
totally agree.
Charles.
I totally agree. The only thing I said, so I think there's a very slight, I think there's a slight chance that if anyone would get it, it would be Lando, and that's because Antonelli could have bad reliability, and the Mercedes has been quite a fragile car. And I think that George is just as likely to be affected by that as Kimi. Hence why I don't think George has got a chance of getting past Kimi. That and Kimi seems to just have his number. But I think Lando has shown that he's really on form, and the McLaren seems to be a lot more of a robust car. So I don't know. We'll see.
I mean, they're all raving about obviously Max this time last year. This is when he started to overturn that
Yeah,
100.
I think
It's
realistically, I think that was
the fact
incredibly
is though, Max
unlikely, and Max made it
Max
happen.
was, but also Max was fighting two drivers, and they were both in the same team, both taking points off each other.
Yeah.
So,
Whereas now you're right.
um,
There's so many people who could win, and like look at qualifying. Like the top four drivers are all separated by a tenth or just over a tenth or whatever. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
it really like it's too close. So there's too many people taking too many points off each other, and like you say, Kimmy just needs to be on or very close to the podium for the rest of the season, and he walks it.
yeah,
So
yeah. So, to tee the race off then. So, Din and Dude of the week. Your Din.
my din, it's a tricky one. I think I'm quite tempted to give it to Max for a very rookie mistake. Um, but I'm also quite tempted to give it to. Was it Carlos Sainz who was on the inside of Albon in the Willie
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
Willie? I mean, I kind of want to give it to both of them. I just thought, what are you doing back there, lads? You know, maybe just the Williams team in general. Maybe it's not, but come on, lads, you've just both signed. There's a little bit of a feel good. All right, our car's shit, but at least we've got these two new drivers, and then you go crash into each other. Yeah. But they made up. They seemed to make friends, and they were chatting to each other at the end of the race, so no damage done. I've not picked a din there, have I? I would say the Williams, I think, but because we'll give, Max is a great driver, so we'll give him one.
Max is harsh. Yeah,
Yeah,
Max is
yeah.
harsh. Yeah. I mean, the ones I was toying with
Oh, actually,
Lawson
sorry.
going
There's
around the
there's
outside.
one more, and because we've got a segment, are we doing FIA?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Okay,
I forgot.
so there is
I
an
forgot.
FIA, so I won't give them din because we're doing our
Yes.
FIA,
Which
but
which stands for
fucked it up. Oh, fucked it all.
fucked it up.
Fucked it
Fucked
all.
it all.
Yeah. The FIA. We'll
Right.
do well, all right. So they so because they get their own din nomination, but because they've got their own segment, we'll stick that in there, and I'll stick with the Williams as my
Yeah.
din.
Okay. I'll make this quick. I don't like her back back of the grid teammates crashing in each other. I think it's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll give the Dins to the Williams as well. I concur. Uh, Dude of the week. Um,
Well, for me, it's got to be Nico. I just that to not hit his teammate. Fair play.
yeah, yeah.
He's an old dog, but those reactions are still there and brilliant. Well done, Nico. Could have been a nasty one.
I think I will go. For me, it's going to be Piastri for his overtake. I know that he
Yeah,
didn't then
no,
have the
it was
best race, but
spectacular. It was
I just
spectacular.
thought it's so duty.
Well
So
worthy of a dude. Well worthy of a dude.
yeah, dude, it was so badass. So yeah, Piastri for his overtake for me. Yeah, brilliant. Okay, FIA then.
Putting the
So
red light on, which they ultimately a few drivers drove through it because they put the red light on by
oh
mistake at the end of the pit lane when they were going back out after the red flag to form up on the grid. So you ended up this situation. We had two Aston Martins and two Cadillacs driving around like half a lap down, and then thankfully for them, also Behrman retired on the way to the grid, and so it was like, oh, we'll have to go around again to move Behrman's car. But it wasn't just Behrman's car they were having to do that for; it was because they put the red light on at the end of the pit lane by mistake. I mean, come on. Like most of the cars are trundled through, and they just like somebody pressed the button to turn the red light on. Honestly.
quality,
Fucking
quality.
amazing. Well done. FIA, brilliant.
Fucked it all. Right. Well, there's always something. That's hence why I may have forgot, but that is why we were planning to put it in every week because there's always something.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So Max re-signing then. So uh, I'll give you my take.
Go on.
He, Now, on one hand, I know, like when someone says Max is in Red Bull, I sit there and go like, no, he's not. No, he's not. But when Red Bull aren't doing well, you're sitting there going like, well, look, Max doesn't want to lose, right? And you then start thinking, I think he'd rather leave, and just come back maybe when Red Bull are good again, and then they go, I'll come back now to the same team because he has always shown, and clearly there is a huge loyalty there. Um, and Max is that character. He really is that character. So I just struggle to see him at any other team. I always have done. But F1 is F1, and people are there to win. Um, so I'd be naive to sort of have that thought as such. But I've always felt that I just don't see it. So in some ways, I think, well, look, I was right then. He's re-signed. Da, da, da. And I love that. I actually absolutely love that about Max. It's like I think that now he's signed his contract, he if he sees that out, he'll be the most loyal F1 driver in history. And I actually think that's a great thing, something to be proud of. You've won 4 world championships, so you've had a good career certainly up to this point. And in the next 4 years, could he win another one, two, 3? Yeah, he could. He's not going to win one this year, but well, I suppose we're talking 4 years from now, he could win another four in a row. Maybe unlikely in recent years, but he could definitely win more world championships there. So I think that it's clever in that sense that he obviously stays. And also, like I say, if there was a spot on McLaren, maybe you can go there. Would Mercedes boot out Russell, whatever they say, to get him in? I think that maybe they would, but then that could then upset the Antonelli carts, and then it's like maybe they then wouldn't do that. So then I still think that the best driver, if he's available, everyone wants to sign him. I still think I do believe that, regardless of what's happening in your team. I think that if you could sign, not okay, the best driver is the wrong way to word it. If one of the greats is available, then I think that you try to sign them. I think F1's also a business, and I think that we all heard a lot of talk about how they might even give Verstappen uh, a team or give him more, well, basically just give him sort of anything and everything to sort of stay as such. And there's obviously like all the Thai bosses were coming and all the other Austrian bosses were coming and they were having meetings with him. And we're not just talking about like most of the other F1 drivers where it's like, oh, here's a contract, you'll be paid handsomely to stay with us. It was like there was a lot of other things that could be included in his package. This could also include things like him having certain breaks to go and race, not breaks from a race, but allow him to race for his GT team and all these kinds of things, which potentially other corporations like say a Mercedes maybe wouldn't be too happy with. Although he's driving a Mercedes GT3 car, so maybe they would. I don't know, but they might not be as lenient to let Max just be Max. And he's built that relationship with Red Bull for so many years. So it's a bit odd to then sort of give that a little bit kind of, I suppose, like Michael Jordan, the Red Bull, the Red Bulls, the Chicago Bulls. So like where like he's got his shoe deal with Nike, and it's like, you know, he's never not going to have that deal with Nike. He's not going to go to another shoe company, but also with the Bulls, it was like he's there, and then I know it got a bit fruity at the end because of his age, and they didn't think he could do it. Hence the last dance. Then he ends up winning the championship for them again. Um, and there's obviously that sabbatical in the middle where he went to play baseball, but a similar kind of thing where I just think like, you know, Michael Jordan is the Chicago Bulls and sort of Nike, and Max is Red Bull, and Messi is Barcelona. Like no one even thinks about Messi playing for PSG or Inter Miami. Messi is Barcelona, and the only reason he had to leave is because they couldn't afford him anymore, right? So, you know, and if Red Bull couldn't afford Max, then he probably might have gone as well because that's part of the deal. But Red Bull literally said, you know, we will pay you what you want to stay, basically. And that's also what's happened. So, yes, I love this loyalty and this, and I do believe in that. I don't think that's bullshit. I do believe that they are knitted together as this perfect combination. And he so suits Red Bull. Like his attitude to racing is everything that Red Bull stand for. So it's almost like Liverpool signing Jurgen Klopp. It was just a match made in heaven. Um, but on the other hand, and to be honest, rightly so, he is considered now by yourself and many others to be the greatest of all time. So at the same time, you pay that person the most money ever paid in F1 also to stay. And so I just think it's a combination of both, really. He hasn't stayed with Red Bull for money, he stayed for loyalty, and he's got what he's worth. So I just think it's it's what I thought would probably happen. And I also think that the guy, although doesn't act like it a lot, I do think that patience will pay off. Most cases, Red Bull are not a shit team. They are probably the second, they are a top two team in F1. Let's be frank about that over the last 15 years, probably. I don't think that even though McLaren have won two world championships recently and Mercedes look like they might win this one here, I would still put Red Bull in the top two. I think that the chances that McLaren can keep this going for the next 5 years or Mercedes can, I don't see Red Bull being out of a world championship for the next. So he's signed for 4 years. So let's say that they're not going to be in a world championship over the next 4 years. I don't see that. I just don't. I know that they've had a lot of and this is the point I wanted to make earlier, is a lot. I do struggle to understand why a lot of people have left Red Bull, because why would you leave a team where you arguably have the greatest driver of all time? And ultimately, even though you might be head of strategy or you might be in a department elsewhere, you still want to be the world champion, and you have the best chance of being a world champion in your workplace with Max Verstappen. So I actually struggle to understand that. The only reason I think of is that you don't enjoy going to work for Red Bull, so it's actually very personal that you're not enjoying it. Hence, maybe the Horner stuff, where maybe the environment was not very nice, so a lot of people left because of that. Because it cannot be because of the brand. Because again, I think that there are top two teams. So if I was working in F1, you'd want to work definitely would want to work for Red Bull because you know there's going to be championships there, and the fact that you've got the best driver, generational great, one of the greats there as well, which means good times ahead. Then you stay, and it could purely come down to money. But even that, I still think if you're getting paid, let's say, 150,000, 200,000 pounds to do this job for Red Bull behind the scenes, but then McLaren are offering you 300,000, an extra 50,000 pounds a year. I maybe that would. I'm going, but then if you're part of a winning machine, maybe you believe in the vision of McLaren, and then they have won 2 world championships. I can see that, but the point I'm getting at is I think that with Max re-signing for 4 years with Red Bull, we've had a brain drain, but it would not surprise me if now Red Bull starts signing some big hitters, because why would you not want to come to Red Bull and work with Max Verstappen? So, GP wants to go on. He's getting a promotion at another team that Red Bull weren't going to give him. Fair enough, right? And you've won 4 world championships. So I understand that. I understand that he's now saying, look, I've done it all here. I'm going to move on, and I'm also getting a promotion. I want to see what I can do over here. But if you're talking about other talent in the paddock, you'd want to go to Red Bull and fight for a world championship with Max Verstappen. Like, that is incredibly, if Max Verstappen hasn't signed yet, this might be why it hasn't happened, because we're unsure if Max is going to be there. And if Max leaves, then Red Bull are a different animal. But now that he's signed for 4 years, people are going to look at that and go, he's there for 4 years. Okay, I'm interested. Because that's appealing, right? It's like the Fergie factor. When you sign for
Yeah,
United,
for sure.
you sign for Alex Ferguson. When you sign for Red Bull now, you're signing because Max has signed.
You
So
know,
that's a massive pull.
firstly, I'll just say I genuinely don't have anything to add to what you've said about Max and why he's signed. So I completely agree with all of that. That was a really good summary. I think the team thing. I think you've basically nailed it. I think the whole, Dietrich Mateschitz passing away was kind of a big, like a little domino that fell, a butterfly flapping its wings, and that certainly seemed to set off a bit of a chain of events. All the stuff coming out about Horner, Helmut Marko, that situation, Jos Verstappen being pretty vocal, and we know the Verstappen family are very close as a family. They do everything together. So I think, and then so that's where a lot of these rumblings about Max came out, and I think ultimately that's why there's been the brain drain. GP, I think you're right, that not necessarily anything to do with that. I think he was just doing the right thing for his career, but a lot of the other kind of things, Adrian Newey deciding to move on, that was totally a Christian Horner thing. So yeah, I think just the politics of Red Bull have kind of caught up to them. But I also agree with you that I would put them in the top 2 teams. Obviously not in terms of the cars at the moment, but as you say, look, Mercedes have been there or thereabouts for the last kind of 15 years, right? And they had a little bit of a blip during the ground effect. They clearly got that car wrong, never quite got to grips with it, but now they're back. And you always thought that they would be back at some point. Ferrari, do I have confidence that they can turn this into a championship winning team and then keep them there, a la Schumacher? No, I don't really have that confidence. And the same thing with McLaren. Yeah, I think they're in a fantastic space right now, McLaren. And maybe they can prove us wrong, but they don't quite have that history, right? It wasn't that long ago that Alonso was calling them, GP2 engine, and they were just, having an absolute disaster of things. So, in terms of,
I mean, most improved team by a
country
mile.
mile, and certainly that, but in terms of what's been happening over the last decade or so, yeah, you'd have to say Red Bull there, and you are completely right. Max Verstappen now signing. Look, I think a lot of the people that have left Red Bull has pleased Max, and probably more importantly, Jos Verstappen. And I think Laurent Mekies has a lot of fans, and I think that he's done a lot of good things behind the scenes that we don't hear about. And Max signing, and actually that video that came out with Laurent doing that kind of cheeky thing with the
Yeah.
resigns. Oh, it needs a hyphen. But the fact they were both kind of involved in that, I think actually really spoke to the fact that Lauren was quite a big part of it, and I think he's really steadied the ship. I think there were also a lot of worries that the partner company at Red Bull, maybe now that Dietrich Mateschitz have passed on, that maybe that commitment wouldn't be there. I think that was also a large part of all of this kind of political stuff going on in the background. I think a lot of that's been settled now. And so Max signing, it's like a green light to any young talent out there. I think anybody who's an established person probably doesn't go back to Red Bull or anything like that. But the next best engineers and talents, I think if they're coming up right
I don't
now,
know.
you're going to where Max
You, know,
is.
you say that, but like, if you're at a team, and you're, say for instance, you're not a Mercedes this year, and you're looking around, like, let's take Jonathan Wheatley for instance, right? Now he can go to Aston and he can do a GB and go, look, I've won it all at Red Bull, and I want to go on to Aston, and I want to see if I can
Do
bring
it
my
again.
knowledge and I can implement a winning mentality at Aston. And I completely understand it. I do understand that. But would I be shocked if Jonathan Whitney went back to Red Bull to be head of whatever there, and not be team principal, but like have a good job, a good salary, based in England again, and you have Max Verstappen and you think, I could win some more here. I enjoyed winning.
Particularly if Fernando
Why
retires.
isn't that appealing?
You
Why
know,
isn't that appealing? So I think that he would do that? No, I think everyone always wants to give it a go and give it a try themselves, go out on their own. But I certainly wouldn't rule other people going back to Red Bull though, and
fair.
even from other teams. I don't think it has to be just up and coming talent that Red Bull need to sign. I think that Red Bull could even go out there, maybe not necessarily bring back people that used to work for Red Bull, but they could go and grab, like McLaren have grabbed Red Bull senior operators. Red Bull could go and grab a Mercedes senior operator and say, look, I mean, again, exciting times at Mercedes because they've got Antonelli and he wins the World Championship. Kind of, why would you leave, kind of thing. But people are also in awe of greats. And Antonelli might win a World Championship, but if you've got a chance to go and work with a four-time World Champion that you know is signed for the next 4 years, I do think that that is a pull. How big that pull will be, we'll wait and see, won't we? But I do think that young talent as well as experienced talent, that's the max factor is a big thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Um,
For sure, like you
you
say,
know,
I guess we'll wait. I guess we'll wait and see.
and it's been unsure. Like you said, we're not going to have seen any of that in the last couple of years because it has been will Max leave? Horner's troubles are happening there. But now that it's settled leadership, Max is signed for 4 years. I expect to see Red Bull signing some people for some money, and it would not surprise me if you start seeing some people leave other teams to go over there because they'll be thinking, hang on a minute, you know, um, I could be messing around here, there, and everywhere. I mean, even Cadillac signed some people, right? Probably put them on big contracts. Aston Martin do the same. They pay everyone an absolute fortune to go there. But I mean, Newey, he's an older gentleman. He might get fed up of all the stuff going on over at Aston and the fact that he's doing this. And you know what? Actually, Horner's not a Red Bull anymore. I'll bugger off back there and go and work with Lauren Mackey.
You
He's
know
lovely
what? It
bloke to work
wouldn't.
for.
I wouldn't rule it. I wouldn't rule that out. That's for sure. Because
I mean, I know that he owns a part of Aston, and that's going to possibly then keep him tied in there. But I just think that you could also become very frustrated working
you
for
can stop
someone
owning
a
things.
Lawrence Stroll.
You can stop owning things.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
anyway,
I just think that that could be something. Yeah, like you said, would it be shocked if that happened? Right, okay. Grid rival then. Let's whiz through this. It's not going to take long. I forgot my team. Shock horror. Had an absolute fucking mess again. Hinted at earlier in the podcast. You, however, have had an absolute worldie of a week. Again, 1,188 points. Star driver Gasly, you could have had someone better, but he done you proud anyway in the points. You've got the two Mercedes boys. They both finished on the podium, so you had a lovely time there.
and
You've got the
Mercedes
race
is my
winner in
team.
Norris, and Mercedes is your team. You've got the race winner in Norris, and you've also got Oscar Piastri, who's had an okay race. It looks like you've had no money lost. You've only but earned more. You now have 5.1 million, and you are 158 million in the bank, which is absolutely ridiculous.
Absolutely ridiculous. It's
Um,
actually now. It's at, like
and
before this. I so I literally I put in my turbo, which was Gasly, because I couldn't have Lindblad anymore because he came to the end of his contract. Then I put in Mercedes because I fancied them to have a half decent weekend. Um, and then after that, I had so much money that I could literally pick any four drivers, any four. And now I have even more money. So by the time I've done the turbo and the most expensive team, I can now just pick anybody, which is frankly ludicrous. I no longer like I am earning more money, but I don't need to. It's at this point it's redundant. It's totally redundant. And I'm up to, since you're not putting teams in anymore. Obviously, the league was very much done, but it's definitely done now. But in the world, I'm up to 478. So I'm in the top 500 now, which is pretty fantastic. But the guys at the top also basically all have like 160 odd million. So I'm pretty sure we're all just going to pick the same four with the same four drivers, perhaps different turbos. And yeah, I need a little bit of luck if I'm going to make it any further. But it's been fun. Right.
Yeah.
On
Well,
that note,
I mean, I refuse to say the league's over as I haven't done yet. But I'm just going to stay quiet this week. I'm not
okay.
gonna say anything.
Well, that's fair. The gap is nearly 2,000 points. It's 1,800 points, isn't it? So good me. Good luck.
Just one race at a time.
Yeah,
One
okay.
race
Chip away at it. Okay. So the only other thing to say is that we've got no race this weekend coming. So that's then followed by Monza the following weekend. So maybe we'll do a little pod, hopefully a nice quick one where we'll just do a quick preview next week or something, particularly as we've already gone to an hour and 46 on this one. And that'll tie this one up in a nice little bow, I think.
Oh, no, you can answer my quiz question.
Oh, go on then. You'll have to make it quick because we have been going on for a very long
quick.
time.
Well, it depends how quick you are.
Okay.
Name me all 7 world champions from the 90s.
Prost, Senna, Hill, Schumacher, Mansell, Mika Hakkinen, and hang on, who's the?
Saying I got this quicker than you.
I'm having an absolute brain for it.
The one you're missing was my third. So
I'm having an absolute brain freeze here.
A tricky one.
Why am I having such a brain freeze on this? I'm going to be so annoyed because I know this.
Do.
Villeneuve, for God's sake.
Oh,
man, that was a total mental block. Bloody hell. I was literally, because I was sort of ticking them off with the teams, and I ticked off Damon Hill and Nigel Mansell in the Williams. So I was like, oh, that's the Williams boys done. And then I was so busy thinking, well, it can't be another Ferrari driver because that's Schumacher. And then it can't be another McLaren driver. So, and then my brain was just fogging. I was looking for another team, but there we go.
My last, actually, when it got asked earlier on this quiz we did, my last was actually Mansell. I rattled through them all very quickly, like you, and then it took me like a good 10 seconds to go. Bloody hell, Nigel Mansell. I was just like friggin' heck, So Jack Villeneuve.
Good fun. I'm glad I got that. He managed to get the brain freeze out of the way.
Yeah. Right. Okay, then, mate. Well, like you say, we've kept ourselves long enough. I mean, are there any listeners yet? I mean, hopefully.
We'll find out. You know what? I've not looked at the analytics for a long while because I think it's important to not care whether we have listeners or not. Not that I don't care about you, listener, but to give the authentic, real, barely qualified approach. We don't want to be messing with our authentic.
We're not chasing anything.
No, exactly. This is not a race.
This is who we are.
This is just a couple of barely qualified morons talking about Formula One.
First podcast though that no one's had a rant.
We'll never get anywhere with this.
Yeah.
But we're
No,
not
this
here
one's
to
gonna
manufacture.
completely
We're not
flop.
going to manufacture rants. Like if we don't
No,
have one
there's
in,
no rant. If
we
there's no
don't.
rant, there's no rant.
Actually, you know what? Not to like bitch on other podcasts, and I do have to go. But like, I watched a little clip of the watch along that Tommy and Matt? Is that their name from the P1 podcast? Where they were like reacting to Russell letting him through, but they're like doing this all the time, and I'm like, who's watching the Formula One like that? Like, I mean, come on, guys. They look like a thumbnail for a YouTube video, but like they're doing it live. I mean, just be yourselves. You know?
Yeah. If they saw me on the watch along to the sprint, they would have seen this. So,
It would
I
look
mean,
like the Truman
people
Show
from...
when he's sleeping. Righto.
Anyway, right.
Thanks,
We should probably do a
listener.
watch along.
Thanks,
We
listener,
should
for
probably do a
enjoying.
watch along for a laugh, shouldn't we?
We should. Well, we don't. We barely watch it live ourselves. Anyway, right. Thank you very much for listening, listener. Thank you for joining me, Ryan. We have been barely qualified. This has been one hell of another long podcast. Thanks for sticking with us. We'll see you in the next one. Because if you've made it this far, you clearly love us, and you'll join us for every single one.
There we go.
Toodles.
Toodles.
Toodles.